The Beacon County cops roll up deep into the woods, flashlights and search dogs out, looking for a dead body. Classic creepy small-town vibe. Meanwhile, Scott McCall's just chillin' at home, fixing his lacrosse stick, doing pull-ups like he's prepping for a GQ shoot, and winding down for bed. Then boom, weird noise outside. He grabs a bat like he's about to go full Home Alone defense mode, steps outside, and nearly smacks his bestie Styles Stilinski, who's dangling off the gutter like some rogue possum. Styles, being the chaotic king he is, drops a bomb. The cops, led by his dad, Sheriff Stilinski, are hunting for a body. Actually, half of one. Joggers found the first part earlier. Yikes. And of course, he ropes Scott into sneaking out to go investigate, even though Scott's got lacrosse tryouts tomorrow. But Styles is like, bro, you'll just be bench decor anyway. They hike into the woods. Problem is, Scott's asthma is not on board with this plan. He stops to puff his inhaler, Styles ditches him, rude, and Scott ends up running smack into a cop and a search dog. Busted. Sheriff Stilinski hauls Styles back to the car, but Scott stays hidden behind a tree like a pro. But just when he thinks he's in the clear, things get hella weird. There's movement in the trees, and suddenly a stampede of deer comes charging at him like a chaotic nature documentary. His inhaler's gone, and in the middle of the madness, he stumbles on something way worse, the other half of the body. Full panic mode. Then it gets worse. A massive wolf-like creature with glowing red eyes comes out of the shadows and straight up bites him. He's screaming, bleeding, rolling down hills. It's a mess. A wolf howls in the distance. That's the moment everything changes for Scott McCall. Next morning, Scott rolls into school like nothing happened, but gets shoulder-checked by Jackson Whitmore, Rich Jerk and Lacrosse Alpha. He meets up with Styles and shows him the huge bite on his side. Scott's like, it was a wolf, and Styles hits him with, dude, wolves haven't been in California since, like, the dinosaurs. Scott also casually drops that he found the rest of the body, which gets Styles hyped. Then Styles gets distracted by his eternal crush, Lydia Martin, who of course, totally ignores him. He blames Scott for killing his vibe. In class, the teacher writes metamorphosis on the board, which is kinda poetic considering Scott's literal transformation. Then Scott randomly hears a phone ringing outside. Like, super hearing level unlocked. He spots a new girl, Allison Argent, on a bench and hears her convo from across campus. Wild. She walks in and sits behind him. She doesn't have a pen, so Scott plays hero and hands one over. They have a cute little moment. After school, they run into each other again, and then boom, Lydia swoops in, makes Allison her new BFF, and drags her into the popular crowd. Jackson tries flexing, and they invite Allison to a party after lacrosse practice. At practice, Scott's still kind of figuring out his new vibe. Coach throws him in goal, expecting him to flop. But Scott's senses kick in, everything slows down, and suddenly he's blocking shots like a superhero. Everyone's shook. Even Lydia's impressed. Jackson tries to show him up but gets owned again. Scott's reflexes are insane, and now people are noticing, including Jackson, who's salty AF. Styles starts connecting the dots. Super strength. Speed. Sharp hearing. Something's definitely off. To prove it, Scott even IDs the flavor of gum in Styles' pocket. Yep. Super sniffer confirmed. Scott's spiraling, thinks it's a medical issue. Styles is like, nah bro, it's giving werewolf. They head back to the woods to find Scott's inhaler but get stopped by this mysterious brooding dude, Derek Hale. Tosses the inhaler back like a mic drop. Styles recognizes him. His family died in a fire ages ago. Major backstory vibes. At the animal clinic, Scott checks his bite. It's gone. Fully healed. But the clinic cats, they're straight up terrified of him. Then, Allison shows up, soaked and upset about hitting a dog. Scott calms her and the dog like some Disney prince, and even patches it up like a vet. Their chemistry is crazy. She even ditches family night to hit the party later. Scott crashes at home but wakes up barefoot in the woods. In a coyote den. In his boxers. Dude's full feral. He runs, jumps a fence, and lands in someone's pool like it's a rom-com gone wrong. Back at school, Jackson corners him, grilling him about the sudden glow-up. Steroids. Scott denies it. Tryouts roll around and Scott's a freaking beast. Flips, goals, speed, the works. Coach is hype. Styles is stressed. Something's not right. That night, Styles goes full werewolf researcher mode. Full moons, rage triggers, lore dump. He's like, cancel your date before you Hulk out on Allison. Scott refuses. They fight. Scott accidentally trashes a chair. The claws are coming out, literally. At the party, Scott's killing it, until he spots Derek lurking and then poof, a shadowy figure on the roof. Full moon hits, and suddenly every sense is overloaded. He bails on Allison mid-dance, and Derek swoops in like a mysterious vampire boyfriend, offering help. Scott goes home, tries to ice himself down, but the transformation hits hard. Claws, fangs, glowing eyes, he's freaking out. He locks himself in. Styles pounds on the door. No answer. Then Scott finds out Derek took Allison home. His rage hits max. He transforms, crashes out the window, runs through the woods, full wolf mode. But before he gets to Allison, Derek stops him. Then bam, they get hit with arrows and flashbangs. Yep, hunters. And guess who's leading them? Chris Argent, Allison's dad. Wild twist. Next day, Scott tries to patch things up with Allison. She's cool about it, until Daddy Argent pulls up. And Scott realizes, that's the dude who tried to kill him. He tells Styles everything. Styles tries to keep him focused, but at practice, Scott's falling apart. Between stress, Coach yelling, and Jackson taunting him, Scott snaps. He tackles Jackson hard and starts partially transforming again, and Derek's watching from the shadows. Whoa. That was a whole season's worth of drama crammed into one megascroll. You just dropped a novella of chaos, and honestly? Iconic. Let's break it down a bit because, phew, that was a wild ride. So basically, Scott's life is spiraling faster than a TikTok trend. He's got werewolf rage issues, his bestie Styles is doing all the heavy lifting in the brains department, Coach thinks he's on drugs, and Lydia's out here gatekeeping relationships based on lacrosse performance. Wild, but also kind of on brand for high school drama. Derek's over here playing cryptic brooding anti-hero, dropping bombs like, oh by the way, Alpha bit you, not me. And also, my whole fam was murdered and the hunters started it. Styles is MVP, as always, comedic relief, emotional support, and chaotic shovel-wielding sidekick all rolled into one. Allison. Caught in a Shakespearean-level family mess. Like, my dad's a werewolf hunter and my aunt might be a literal arsonist who kicked off a massacre, kind of mess. And she's just trying to live her best teen life, maybe make out with her slightly furry boyfriend and go bowling. The alpha's on some weird power trip, murdering people, crashing into cars, chasing folks down in stores, and leaving creepy red spirals like it's tagging territory. Mysterious, spooky, and very much not giving chill. And let's not ignore Jackson's villain origin arc slowly unraveling like an Instagram reel. All attitude, jealousy, and now he's got glowing claw marks like a cursed protagonist. Honestly, it's giving early 2010s supernatural chaos meets teen melodrama with a side of trauma and wolf fur. You've got fear, friendship, forbidden love, and full-on monster mayhem. But like, what's your angle with all this? Are you recapping for fun, working on a rewrite, or cooking up some fanfic ideas? Eyes, 'cause I'm all in if you want to dive deeper, whether we're fleshing out character arcs, polishing scenes, or just throwing shade at how nobody in this town ever questions the rising body count. So, Allison's digging into her fam's mysterious symbol and history. Meanwhile, she opens her locker and boom, helium balloons everywhere. Super embarrassing. Scott notices, realizes it's her birthday, and convinces her to ditch school and celebrate. Cute, right? In chemistry class, the teacher drops a bomb. Parent-teacher conferences are happening for anyone flunking. Yep, Scott's on that list. Elsewhere, Styles tries grilling Danny about where Lydia and Jackson were last night but gets nowhere. Then, in peak awkward Styles fashion, he randomly asks Danny if he's attractive, freaks out, and literally falls off his chair. Scott and Allison end up spending the day flirting in the woods, having a full rom-com moment. Meanwhile, Derek corners Jackson in the locker room, pressing him about what he saw at the video store. Jackson lies, but Derek does the whole werewolf heartbeat test and warns him about those sketchy claw marks. Styles visits Lydia, who's still loopy on meds, trying to figure out what she saw during the attack. All she says is, "Mountain lion," just what the cops said. Styles knows something's fishy. Then he finds a creepy video on her phone showing the Alpha running from the crime scene. Back at the ruins of the Hale house, Kate Argent and her goon squad show up early even though Chris told her to wait. Typical chaos. Inside, Derek's training, but gets ambushed. Kate tasers him, flirts weirdly, and drops a bomb. Her crew didn't kill Laura Hale. The Alpha did. She offers to help kill the Alpha if Derek IDs them, but realizes he's clueless and tries to shoot him. He barely escapes. Over at the vet clinic, Deaton acts shady when the sheriff shows him Alpha footage. He dips instead of helping. In the woods, Allison and Scott get real sentimental. Then Scott remembers, oh, parent-teacher night. He's toast. At school, parents are getting the tea on their kids. Jackson's drive is apparently adoption-fueled. Lydia's parents think she's flunking, but turns out she's got a 5.0 GPA and major genius vibes. Stiles's dad gets a midterm story about circumcision, skull, while Melissa McCall finds out Scott's missing and is fuming. Scott and Allison head back, but chaos erupts at school. Something's out there. Scott senses it and ends up getting chased, but it's just Derek testing him. Scott begs Derek to teach him control. Derek agrees but tells him to ditch Allison. Scott obviously ignores that. Then, Alpha makes its move, scratches a spiral symbol on Scott's window. It's the same one from Laura's grave. Big yikes. Later, everyone ends up trapped at school with the Alpha hunting them down like it's a horror movie. Scott and Styles try calling for help over the PA, but it's all a trap. The Alpha wants Scott to lose control and slaughter his friends. Styles figures it out too late. Scott transforms and almost goes full beast mode, but Allison's voice brings him back. Police show up just in time. Everyone's safe-ish. But Scott's shattered. The Alpha wasn't just toying with them, it wanted Scott to join the pack. Worst part? A dark part of Scott kinda wanted it too. Allison's done. She breaks up with him right then and there. Styles tries to help Scott cope by getting him drunk in the woods, great idea face with rolling eyes, but the Alpha shows up again and kills 2 random dudes. Scott's losing it more with each full moon. He and Styles plan to lock him up next time. During practice, Scott's weird and aggressive. He lies to Styles about Lydia kissing him, even though she totally did. Drama. Styles handcuffs Scott to a radiator on full moon night, low-key petty revenge, but Scott hulks out, breaks free, and goes after Jackson and Allison. Derek swoops in to stop him just in time. Now Scott's begging for a cure. Derek says, only way is to kill the one who bit him. Meanwhile, Jackson's catching on to Scott's werewolf side. Things are spiraling. Mr. Harris, creepy teacher guy, ends up on some Alpha hit list too. The Alpha confronts him, throwing chairs like it's WWE. Derek shows up again, chaos follows, and now everyone's hunting Derek. Chris and Kate chase Scott and Styles instead, who are running a decoy mission. Derek's pissed. He was so close to catching the Alpha, but now he's a fugitive. He thinks Harris might know something about the Alpha and that weird spiral symbol. Scott wants to fix things, win Allison back, and maybe even get cured, but let's be real, it's not looking great. And just when you think it can't get weirder, Jackson dreams a vine of Wolf's Bane is pulled from his neck by a doctor, but then wakes up. Maybe it's a dream. Maybe not. The doctor brushed off Jackson's injuries like they were no big deal and tossed him some antibiotics, thinking it was just aconite poisoning. Weird thing. Jackson somehow knew what aconite was, even though he'd never learned about it. That freaked him out enough to start digging for answers. He sweet-talked Melissa McCall into letting him use a hospital computer and started researching Wolfsbane. Red flags everywhere. At school, Jackson straight-up confronted Scott, claiming he knew Scott's secret, that he's a werewolf. He demanded to be turned too, or he'd expose everything. That made it urgent for Scott to get Allison's necklace, which was somehow connected to all this. He tried to sit next to her, but Lydia blocked him like an emotional firewall. So Scott, in a sad boy move, sent Allison some old couple pics. Didn't help. Time for plan B, steal the necklace. Meanwhile, Jackson kept provoking Scott, mocking his lacrosse skills, throwing shade about Allison, and generally being a menace. Scott snapped and crushed his lunch tray in half. Jackson just smugly bit into his apple, like a villain in a teen soap. Later, Jackson and Allison had a flirty swim, and Jackson joked that his sharp cheekbones gave him an edge. Elsewhere, Scott searched Allison's stuff for the necklace but came up empty. In the hallway, Lydia confronted Jackson about a breakup text. He coldly asked for his spare house key back and told her she was dead weight. Brutal. At Stiles's house, Derek popped up unexpectedly. When Stiles's dad almost caught him, Stiles deflected with awkward small talk. Afterward, Stiles asked Danny for tech help to trace a creepy text sent to Allison. Danny said no at first, until Stiles got Derek to pretend to be his super-hot cousin, Miguel, and flex a little. Danny was into it and agreed to help, but needed more info. Eventually, Scott sneaked into Allison's room and found the necklace, being used as a bookmark in an old werewolf hunter book. She'd even circled passages. Did she know the truth already? Danny traced the ominous text to a hospital computer registered to Melissa McCall. Yikes. Then Chris Argent caught Scott sneaking out of their house and invited him in, not for tea, but for an interrogation. Allison overheard Scott saying he just wanted to protect her, but he left not knowing she was listening. Allison went for a jog and stumbled on Derek's wrecked house, where Kate appeared. Their creepy convo hinted at a dark history between Kate and Derek. Turns out, Kate might be the real monster. At the hospital, Stiles looked for Melissa but instead found Peter Hale's hospital bed empty. Plot twist: Peter was the alpha. Worse, the nurse sending creepy texts was working with him. Derek knocked her out, but Peter casually revealed his origin story: the fire, the years of slow healing, the rage. Becoming alpha sped up his recovery. He wanted understanding, not forgiveness. Meanwhile, Sheriff Stilinski learned from a teacher about a woman who'd asked weird questions about fire science, a week before the Hale fire. Her only identifying detail? A family necklace. Boom. Kate was the arsonist. Stiles and Scott figured out the Alpha's victims were linked to that fire. Jackson started looking sketchy, and even Allison's dad thought he might be a beta. Scott was reeling when Derek and Peter started pushing him to join their pack. Then, the Alpha stabbed Scott and sent him into freaky flashbacks about the fire and murder. Allison found a sharp arrow tip and went to the woods to test it with Lydia. When someone approached, she panicked and tasered them. It was Scott. He was just trying to return her necklace. Oops. Later, she visited Scott's house and found out her dad's dinner date was the Alpha. His plan: turn Melissa into a werewolf to control Scott. Scott barely stopped him in time. Later, Scott saved Jackson from getting mauled but got shot by Kate. The town vet patched him up, casually revealing he treats werewolves on the side. Meanwhile, Kate kidnapped and tortured Derek, revealing to Allison their family's hunting legacy. Training time, I guess? At the winter formal, Scott wasn't allowed to go because his grades sucked, but he needed to be there to protect Allison. So he pressured Jackson into taking her. Allison roped Lydia into taking Stiles. At the dance, Peter creeped on Allison, but Scott stepped in. He eventually snuck in and confessed his love to her. Major kiss moment. Jackson, meanwhile, got drunk and wandered into the woods where he ran into hunters. Panicked, he told them Scott was the werewolf. Lydia went looking for him but ended up getting mauled by Peter. Stiles was forced to tell Peter where Derek was or lose Lydia. Peter warned that if Lydia survived, she'd become a werewolf. Scott tried to return Allison's necklace, but her dad ran him over with a car, forcing him to shift right in front of Allison. Shocked, she ran. Scott hid in the woods, heartbroken. Peter forced Stiles to help find Derek, even offered to turn him into a werewolf, but Stiles declined. Scott and Derek eventually teamed up after Scott proved Peter killed Derek's sister on purpose to become Alpha. Furious, Derek agreed to help take him down. Stiles found out from his dad that Kate was the arsonist. Later, Kate and Allison ambushed Scott and Derek with explosive arrows. Kate was about to kill Scott, but Chris Argent stopped her, only for Peter to show up and kill Kate in revenge. In the final fight, Scott and Derek went 2-on-1 against Peter. Stiles and Jackson came in hot with a Molotov cocktail, and Allison lit it with an arrow. Even Jackson joined in, tossing his beer bottle into the flames. Peter burned up and turned back into crispy Peter Hale. Scott and Allison kissed, promising to stay together, until Derek stepped out of the house and killed Peter, taking his place as the new alpha. Later, Jackson begged Derek to bite him, and Derek delivered. But at the hospital, Scott and Stiles noticed something strange. Lydia wasn't healing. She didn't turn into a werewolf. Something else might be happening. Back at the Argents, Chris and Victoria knew the town would turn against them now that Kate's secrets were exposed. But they weren't done yet. More hunters were coming. Scott and Allison found one quiet moment on a rooftop, holding each other under the stars, finally catching their breath.